Welcome back to the Oklahoma Drill. We've got our good friend Nathan on the pod here today. It's me, Ryan, and Alex with Nathan, and we're going to talk college football. How about that one? The Oklahoma Sooners are doing practices because it's summer, but it's we passed media days. I don't think we never actually recorded after the spring game, right?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so we'll have,
No,
we can. I mean, we can start wherever, but let's talk about Brent Venables and his fellows. How are they doing?
So the thing with Brent is it's been kind of interesting the past week or so because of media days. As people are finally starting to kind of hear him talk,
right?
And outside of just Oklahoma people, and the dude, he had the most hilarious quote at Big 12 Media Days where something was inserted in his mouth.
I was looking at this, right, and it's the fire hose is fully inserted into my mouth. We've been blowing and going.
Yeah,
I believe is essentially the quote.
The best part is he probably had no idea, and it still probably hasn't dawned on him that it sounds any other way than how he intended it to sound.
Right. So. Yeah. So that's been kind of entertaining, and but the thing with Brent that's been surprising, just this whole period of time since we hired him, is that there were some concerns going in about what's the recruiting going to look like. He had the idea of I guess largely he's kind of old school in his ideologies, and he came from Clemson where Dabo is. I mean, I do not like Dabo. I don't think anybody on this podcast likes Dabo, but Brent loves him some Dabo, and so I was a little, I don't know if worried is the right word, but I was paying attention to how Brent might be taking the things that were happening at Clemson and how he would apply those to Oklahoma. And there's been a lot of overlap, I feel like. But overall, so far, I think that the practice of those transferring over has been I've been pretty happy with it. I think things have gone really well. We have to see it on the field, but I'm pretty excited about pretty much every aspect of what I've seen from Brent Venables so far.
Yeah, his recruiting's been on a tear the last month or so. And that was something that there's some concern, especially people that don't follow it closely because they just saw the commit list. They didn't know that what was coming. Couldn't see the buildup. But we're starting to see, payoff of his visit strategy of we're not going to take a commit if you're still going to keep visiting other places. So it's going to take a little bit longer than a lot of the schools that load up in April and May on those initial visit weekends. Now kids are starting to having taken all their visits, or they're getting ready for their senior seasons, and they're starting to make those calls so they don't have to bother themselves in the fall with that stuff. So they're starting to commit, and OU's gotten, I don't know, a dozen commits. It seems like it the last month or so, and they have a few more lined up. So and they've been really high quality star rankings and everything. So it's exciting. And then, as far as Brent as a coach, it is interesting. I think something that a lot of fans have been really excited about is just what seems to be a very clear plan of what he wants instituted and how organized everything seems and feels. And I think maybe compared to the previous regime, that's been a somewhat stark contrast in some areas. So that's been good to see because I think the best coaches often are the best organizers. It's kind of like field generals.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that stood out to me with Brent is that to me, he acts like a really good football coach. And what I mean by that is that he's kind of crazy and kind of psychotic. And you can tell that he is at all times focused on how he can make the OU football program as good as he can.
Not wired like a normal person.
Right. This is not normal human behavior. This is not how you're supposed to be as a human. But this is what great college football coaches do.
Yeah, frankly, it's a little off-putting. If you just want to hang out with them, I think. Right. But for your football coach, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely.
And that's been part of the media days thing, is everybody like fully recognizing and remembering, like, oh yeah, that guy who needed a dedicated get back coach on the staff of Clemson just to keep
Right.
him on the sideline, he's crazy.
Yeah.
And so like a guy who hears the metaphor, we're drinking from the fire hose, and is like, yeah, give me that fire hose.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. And then contrasting that with Lincoln, and I'm just going to go in a little bit about what I've kind of come to, just my opinion has evolved with Lincoln, and that Lincoln doesn't act like that at all. You know what I mean? Like, Lincoln to me doesn't act like an elite football coach does. You know what I mean? Like, I think that there's a lot of so for example, one of the things that I've noticed with Lincoln since moving to USC is he's talked a lot about roster building, and he's talked a lot, like one of the first things I remember him saying when he was maybe even in his opening press conference at USC, he talked about, we have the potential to build the best roster in the country here at USC. And then there was the article that came out a month or two ago maybe about how he went into the playoff and he never had anything better than maybe the third best roster, but it was never, most of the time he had the fourth best roster as he went into the playoff. And to me, that is a really, really NFL way to look at things. Like, I think of it as that's what an NFL coach would say. If they're going into the playoffs, they wouldn't, I could never imagine Nick Saban going into a playoff and being like, yeah, just my roster's just maybe not there. You know what I mean? Not that Nick Saban's roster ever wouldn't be there, but you know what? Like, if for some reason there were other teams that were just more talented than Nick Saban, you're never going to hear him talk about it. You know what I mean? You would never hear Bob Stoops talk about it. Like, that's one of the guys that really stands out. And I remember in 2016 when we played Ohio State at home and they whipped our ass. Like, in the post-game press conference, I remember there were some journalists that were kind of trying to lead him to saying that Ohio State was just a more talented roster. Like, there were multiple questions that were trying to get him to admit that Ohio State just had more talent. And he was like, look, I'm never going to sit here and tell you that I don't have good enough players. I'm going to sit here and tell you about all the things that we as coaches should have done to have them better prepared, and all the things that we could have executed better to make up for whatever there might be from a roster standpoint, And so that to me that's college football to me. That's what a college football coach, that's how one acts. That's how Brent Venables has acted. He hasn't mentioned talent on the roster since he's gotten here. You know what I mean? It's all about, I'm building the program. The roster is a result of what I build with the program and the culture that I build. And to me, Lincoln, it's all about like, oh, I've got to have the talent. I've got to have the roster. And I think that largely that's why he went out there, is because he looked at a situation where he could build a more talented roster than the teams that he was going to be playing consistently. And I can't, honestly, I'm just like upset at myself that I was a Lincoln Riley fan for as long as I was, just because that kind of mentality, you're not winning anything like that, with that kind of idea, kind of as to me, that is like the guiding light for Lincoln Riley. Yeah. And that's just not what great college football coaches do.
Well, I think college is, roster is extremely important. I'm not going to ever say that it's not, but there's so many other things in college, because you're dealing with 18-year-olds, that culture is just as much of a factor. If roster talent was all that mattered, Texas would be a lot better every year. Right. So, having that coach or that infrastructure that emphasizes, those positive cultural aspects, and some things that Venables and Stoops and Saban and, for, other people that have had a lot of success, that those guys believe in, especially in schools that can't have the number 1 and 2 recruiting class every year. That's vital. And so maybe Lincoln can do that, but I have my own suspicions on what he's able to get out of guys, and him carrying certain staff members to USC tells me that I'm not exactly convinced that he recognizes his own problems, so, or is willing to fix them. So,
Well, and to just like be a complainer about it. Is it possible to accept? I mean, it's possible, but like, how likely is it that he's ever going to have an offense as talented as the one he had in 2017, right? Which
Probably
was 10, which was 11 NFL players and the future Attorney General of the state of
Because-
Oklahoma, Dimitri Flowers.
because the difference is I don't think he's ever going to have an offensive line like that.
Right.
He might have a wide receiver core that could get there, but I don't think he's going to be that good up front.
Yeah, and I don't mean for this, this doesn't have to be a, we talk about what's going to happen at USC, but the more this goes, and we have no idea how it's going to work with Brent Venables.
Yeah, he could suck.
I'm not going to sit here and predict that, he's going to be fantastic or whatever.
I think he'll be good.
But-
I don't think he'll be a title winner or anything.
Yeah. But what I will say is that just the way that he operates and his thought process and the way he approaches college football, to me, is more as a great college football coach would than what Lincoln Riley did. Lincoln
Really said-
Riley,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say at least a great college football coach for Oklahoma.
Right. Sure.
Lincoln's more of like the Pete Carroll mindset, maybe a little bit. But Pete Carroll is also a badass like recruiter, so I don't know. Maybe that's a bad comparison. But
Yeah.
Pete Carroll also
yeah.
has some suspicions about the September 11 attacks.
I didn't know that, so you learned something today.
Which again just goes to show if you want success, you got to be crazy. I don't know if Lincoln's got that,
Yeah. But I mean, even Pete Carroll, like there was a very well-defined culture.
Yeah,
at
that
USC
maybe
under
wasn't the
Pete
best
Carroll.
comparison. I was just thinking pro
You know?
coach at USC, and that was the
Right.
first one I latched onto. So
Like USC, there was a lot of, they had insane talent, but it was a different culture than what you would see at like an Alabama or what Brent Venables was going to do at OU. But it
Yeah.
was like really well defined and established. The one place that I can think of that like probably won without culture is LSU in 2019.
that's just
You
talent
know?
on talent. So that's
And that
how,
was
that's how Lincoln
ridiculous.
can win, is if he just has the most talent.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
That's
I don't
what
think you can do that.
yeah.
Well, and I think, Lincoln, I think, got a lot of credit from all of us for a lot of the time he was here by being like a normal, reasonable, intelligent guy, which for the most part he is, right?
Yeah.
He was like
I'm not saying
generally
he's
correct.
bad off OC. I have my grievances, but yeah.
Well, yeah, just like generally correct on the social issues of the day. Didn't overreact. Didn't throw tantrums. Didn't make outrageous statements to the media. Rarely talked to the media, frankly. And I think like we all had respect for him as a human being
Yeah.
in a way that
Many other coaches are
I don't know. Maybe the head coach at Oklahoma can't be that kind of person.
I'm not sure that the head coach at a great college football program really can be that person.
Well, because the thing you are doing as a college football coach is unreasonable. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
It's dangerous. It's stupid. It's
Yes.
probably not morally justifiable.
No, it's an insane thing to do, and it's an insane thing to go through. And so I think you need a psycho to be that kind of successful football coach. And that to me is what I see with Brent Venables.
Here's a
Go ahead.
question. Of the active coaches, who's the best parallel to Brent? Who's the best current psycho out there?
I don't know. Like this has nothing to do with the success of anything. I look at Saban.
Saban? You think Saban's that?
Well, the thing to remember about Saban is that he is now very old, but that is a dude who can get
That is
mad
true.
about things.
He's gonna die on the field. He's like Bill Snyder.
Yeah. That is a dude and Bill Snyder is another example of a guy who is like, you have to be kind of
Psycho.
out there to succeed.
Snyder's actually a really good comparison now that I think about it. Like he's a different
Which
kind of
also,
psycho, but he's still
yeah,
a psycho.
also makes
so.
sense,
Yeah.
Right.
since he coached Brent. But
Really is like a really good, like if they could do like the fusion dance for like 3 ways, he's like a perfect 3-way fusion of Snyder, Dabo, and Bob. Like it is pretty, you can see elements of all three of them in him. Because I didn't
Absolutely.
remember him being as like much of a talker whenever he was the DC, but he's a hell of a talker now.
Yeah.
Dude will riff for 25 minutes on one question.
Well, I think that, there's the one thing you look at that got me excited initially whenever we hired him was the fact that all of his former players just loved him.
True.
Like all the former players at OU were just like, this is the guy. This is the guy we need. All of his players at Clemson were like, God, this sucks that
He's
he's
the guy
leaving,
you need.
but I'm
Yeah.
happy for him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And the entire, Clemson's whole fan base, it was like, God,
Yeah.
no, this
They knew.
sucks.
Yeah.
And that
They all hate
being-
Lincoln Riley now too, because Lincoln Riley took Brent away from him. So
Right, exactly. Yeah, they but to me that is, there's a lot of Bob Stoops in that. There's a lot of Dabo in that, like, and I'm sure, Snyder is the same way, but yeah, I think that is correct that he is like a pretty perfect three, a
you
fusion
can
of all
see
three of
elements
those
of all three
guys.
of them. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll see what that looks like on the football field. Like I feel pretty good about it. Honestly, like I feel like I think we're probably gonna have a pretty good season this year. I don't know what that, 10-2, 11-1, 9-3. I don't know.
Yeah.
One thing I'm confident in is I'm not gonna hate this football team like I did last year's team. And I went back and so much of the talk with Lincoln, it's his winning percentage is always cited.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wonder if that should be as highly thought of as it is. You know what I mean? Because how many of those wins did we look like shit in
Yeah.
a lot of that game? And like how many games we went into games with fucking Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray and were consistently eking out wins against inferior teams.
Yeah.
They were still wins. A win's a win, sure. But is it that impressive to beat Kansas State by 7 points when you have Baker Mayfield and that ridiculous offense that had 11 NFL players on it? I don't think so.
Well, to go back to what you were saying earlier, we were out talenting people, but we weren't out coaching people, and that's why he wants to out talent people.
Right. And it's just those teams should have been beating the shit out of the
Yeah.
Big 12. Like that's the thing, is it's just like eking
just
out
can't-
wins against bad Baylor teams.
I just can't get past getting worse every year. That's my thing. Like,
Yeah.
we weren't trending up. So, and I think it would have been even worse next year. So, I mean, we
Well,
would have had Caleb in second year, but other important guys were leaving. So,
Yeah, what does this roster even look like if Lincoln's still here?
well, we know Mims and Weiss would have been gone. And
Hazelwood was
who
gone.
else?
Stogner
Yeah.
was gone. Like,
Right.
I mean, yeah, we would have brought in dudes in the transfer portal. There's no doubt, but we're not bringing in Jordan Addison. Like he went out to USC. He's not bringing in Jordan Addison and Travis Dye to come to Oklahoma to replace the guys we lost. Like,
Yeah.
it's I don't, and that to me speaks to there was a lot of issues inside the program that we just didn't know about. Which was by design. We weren't supposed to because everything was
Never.
locked down to the
Yeah.
max. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think we're lucky to have come out of the situation the way we have.
What do you guys think what would you predict his first record being, just ballpark?
Talking about Brent.
No, well, Brent, we can get into that as well, but I'm talking about Lincoln. How do you think he's going to do initially first year at USC?
I haven't looked at their schedule.
Yeah, let's do this real quick to see
Okay.
what they got.
All right. I've got their schedule pulled up. Okay.
Okay.
So they open at home against Rice. That's a win.
And
Second game of the year on the road at Stanford. I think that's
probably a win.
a win.
probably a win, but you
Not-
could
not
definitely see them
guaranteed.
losing.
That is a game. That is a losable game.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stanford's been getting worse too. So that's a toss up though. We'll
Yeah.
give it. I'll give it to USC, but it's close.
Right. Fresno State, who's been solid, but they'll probably beat Fresno
They could lose
State.
that.
They could
Fresno
lose
State
it.
won
yeah.
like 10 double digits last year, didn't they? And they got their quarterback. Did Hayner go back? I can't remember.
I think they did, but their coach went to Washington. So it
Oh,
is a new
that's right.
coach.
Yeah, I
Well,
feel
I
like
mean, that's
they're gonna
Also
win.
losable, but maybe we'll see.
Yeah. At Oregon State.
That's a W.
They're getting
Probably.
better though.
Oregon State's getting better, and it is in Corvallis. That's a
Madison
losable
Gum's
game.
still there. I'm curious.
I think he is. I think he is.
I think he's like a 6th-year senior. Anyway,
Yeah. COVID year. Arizona State at home, probably
That's a W.
because Arizona State sucks.
they have no players left, so yeah.
Yeah,
Just Herm out there now.
right. Washington State at home, they're probably winning that. So
God, what a pathetic schedule this is. Okay.
real possible that they start 6-0. Like super possible.
It could also
And
be
if
like
that-
4-2, but yeah.
If let me tell you that, like if USC starts 6-0, they're
Yeah.
gonna be like fucking number 3 in the country.
They
Yeah.
will be. Sure.
It's gonna be hilarious.
With a point differential of like +5.
Yeah,
Stuart Mandel may fly like with the amount of like exuberance that he will have about this.
Now, nobody mentioned that it's impossible to be 6-0 with a point differential of +5. But
that's true. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But game 7 of the year at Utah, that's an L.
They're going to get destroyed. I'm
You're
so
losing that
confident in that.
Yeah. At Arizona,
They'll win.
I don't
that.
know. They'll probably win. Arizona's done like really well in the transfer portal and even in recruiting. Like
No, they're
they'll probably beat them, but I'm just saying. Cal at home, probably a win.
they're not going to lose to Jetfish. So
That's fair. It's fair. Cal at home, probably a win. Colorado at home, probably a win.
God, what a shitty conference this is. Okay.
right, this is very fast become an exercise in holy shit, the Pac-12 is bad.
Yeah. And then last 2 games of the year at UCLA. I think it's
They should
toss-up.
win that.
They
Well,
should.
is
They
UTR
should
still-
win, but they might not.
yeah.
Yeah. And then Notre
Who their
Dame.
quarterback
I
is.
think they lose to Notre Dame last.
Oh,
week
they'll
of the
get
year.
they'll get killed by. So I mean, it's possible they could be like 10-2, but I bet
Yeah.
they'll lose a couple of those. So let's say 8-4.
I was going to say 9-3, but
Okay, yeah, split the difference. 9-3.
I think 8-4 is like a pretty good floor for them.
yeah.
You know?
God, what a
Um,
shitty conference that is.
If they go worse than 8-4, then Lincoln Riley did a horrendous job.
Yeah.
Is what I'll
I would
say.
agree.
Yeah.
I
Like
mean, their
a
talent. They can.
Bad job.
If you have Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison, that should get you like 6 right
Yeah.
there, and then just add the rest of
Yeah.
them. So.
well, we're going to get to the Arizona game, and Jordan Addison's will have like 7 targets on the season. So
that's
true.
completely true.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. But like, so yeah, and it's entirely possible that Lincoln could have a better record than Brent this year. That's entirely possible.
That'd be, yeah,
But-
yeah, sure, it's possible.
Unless he goes out there and if they go 10-2, but they like kick the shit out of the teams that they're supposed to,
Yeah,
like it's more of the same.
Yeah.
You know, if it's like, oh well, it's hard to beat Oregon State on the road. It's
Well,
hard to win football games and
there's
in
only
conference,
2 teams on that schedule that can match them in the trenches, and they're going to get killed by both of them. So,
No, it's a pretty interesting thing to look at their schedule. But I think 8-4 to like 11-1 is what they're like. 11-1, I think, is like their max ceiling.
I
know?
can't see them being that good, but I've been wrong. before.
well, but they could be 11-1, just squeaking out luck, and then just get like handily dismantled by Utah or something.
kind of like OU last year. We were 9-0 and barely alive. So
Mhm.
Right.
Relying on
Um,
plays of dubious legality to
right,
convert a 4th and 2 against Kansas.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes. So let's talk a little bit about we mentioned recruiting earlier, and about how it's going really well at this point. And it was a lot slower than what it ever was under Lincoln. Lincoln likes to get guys in the bag early.
Spring game.
Yeah, spring game was like the day. And what I thought was really interesting about Brent with, obviously the big thing with Brent is, like you said, he doesn't want guys committing that are, if they're still going to take visits elsewhere. Like he doesn't view that as a commitment, which I think is, that's
I don't
his
completely agree
prerogative.
with it, but that's his
Yeah.
thing. So
That's his thing.
Yeah.
So far it's working.
Yeah, and I mean, like you could argue about like the tactic of it, I guess.
right.
But like,
he did it at Clemson. So
And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, you know, if we got a lot of early commits in the Lincoln Riley area, and then guys decommitted, and our
Yeah.
signing days were disappointing.
Lincoln was
Yeah.
like the polar opposite. So
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things with Lincoln that he always, it was always about the momentum. It was always about the image
Right.
of what was
how
going
cool
on.
did we make OU look? Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, okay, guys, don't commit right now because we're going to have you all commit at the spring game.
Yeah.
It's going to get everybody really excited. And,
Hear
we
that,
had that,
RJ Henderson? You're going to commit at the spring game.
right. We had that one class that we got like 8 commitments spring game weekend. We wound up signing like 3 of them. You know what
I
I
don't even
mean?
know if it was that many, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was like okay, that wound up sucking, and Brent, I don't think he gives a shit about, he didn't give a shit about image. He didn't give a shit about momentum. He's like, I want you guys to know
that you're coming here.
that you're coming here. And the reason why I think the strategy that he's doing works is because he's not like getting guys to commit and then telling them, okay, you can't visit anymore. Like, he is telling them, go take all of your visits. We
Yeah.
want you to be as informed as you possibly can be. And we feel confident that at the end of that, the relationships that you have with us and how you feel about the school and the experience you're going to have here, we feel like that's going to be better than anywhere else you're going to visit, And so it's not hypocritical for him to tell a kid that, because he's giving them every opportunity to go take those visits before they commit, and that was never the case before. And like you said, Lincoln took a lot of decommitments, especially late in the process. Shouts to Alabama, obviously, pretty consistently. And I wonder, we'll have to see how it goes, but I don't think that's going to be as big of a thing with Brent, because I think it's so much less. It's less about getting a kid excited about the program. Lincoln wanted the kids to just be super excited and get swept up and then commit. Brent, it's like, I want to get you excited, but I want you to leave our visit with that excitement and then go take other visits and compare. You know what I mean? So it's just less about emotions and it's more about making an objective decision, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you look at like Clemson's history, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they've only had like a handful of guys decommit over like years. So, Corey Foreman was one, but it's like maybe one every other class. It's pretty rare. So, there's some validity to it. I think Brent's had one decommit this class, but it was a really early one. So maybe the policy hadn't quite sunk in yet. So,
well, and that was a kid that was going to commit to the last staff too.
Right. Yeah. So, and he looked a lot like Trajan Bridges, so you have to question it. So
yeah. So no, I'm really interested in how it's going. And it seems like right now we can do no wrong in the recruiting trail. Like, the defensive doors that have been opened by having a real defensive staff.
Ted Roof's on the staff.
Ted Roof. If you got a chance to play for Ted Roof, I don't know how you turn him down.
Come stay at the Ted Roof Inn.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
and like, I'm really excited about the direction. Like, what is it? I know, Nathan, you and I both follow recruiting really closely, a lot more closely than Ryan.
Oh, absolutely.
What is it about the philosophy and from a player standpoint? What do you feel like we're looking at in players now that differs from what we've experienced in previous years under Stoops and Riley?
Like, well, so how do you mean, like
specifically defensive
type of
types of players,
body types and stuff? Well, compared to the last Grinch staff, we're a lot bigger on the defensive line for one.
Not hard.
Yeah. We're not rolling out 290-pound nose tackles. That's probably the biggest thing, honestly. We're going to a 4-3, well, kind of. Linebackers are really, really versatile. Like Lewis Carter, he could be a Will, he could be a nickel, he could be a Sam, he could be a lot of stuff. That's probably, but honestly, the defensive line is probably the biggest difference that I see.
Yeah. I think that there's a little, I think they're a little less specific with
Height, weight stuff.
secondary body type stuff,
Yeah,
especially.
they're more like, because if you think about what Brent did at Clemson, he took Makuba, Andrew
Yeah.
Makuba, whenever Grinch wouldn't, because he valued ability over height,
Right.
kind of like the Jalen Catalon thing. Also,
Yeah.
he wasn't
Yeah.
quite tall enough, but
Right.
he's a ball player kind of guy. So,
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit more of that. Like, I'm not saying we're going to go take a bunch of bookies, but I think that there's a
he
little.
might have been good under Brent, man. You don't know.
You never know. You never know. But I think there's a little more wiggle room of saying like, oh, this dude's not 6 foot, this guy's not 6'1", but he's really good at football. I think of a guy like Eric McCarty at safety that there's no way in hell the last staff is offering that guy.
No,
It just wasn't happening.
I mean McCarty is like a Brent Venables like special
Oh,
kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, he
No,
checks all the stereotype boxes. So
Yeah. No, we already have a white middle linebacker and a white safety committed. And it's year one for Brent. Like that's going to be a thing. You just look at those Clemson teams. Yeah.
the Ben Bolwares and the Tanner
Right.
Muses and the can't think of the
Mhm.
safety's name that caught the interception, but there are a lot of them. So
they
Just
had
dudes
like
who are just
3
gonna be
white safeties. Yeah.
Jack asses, but
Yeah.
yeah,
frat guys will love them.
so
Mhm.
many insurance salesmen. Yeah. So
Yeah. But they're going to be so assignment sound. It's crazy,
Yeah.
So assignment sound.
Just imagine the quantity of lunch pails.
Yeah. 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 I was watching a Clemson defensive kind of like, it was like a cut up game where it just had all their defensive snaps. And this past season with James Skalski at middle
Skalski's fun as
linebacker.
hell. Yeah.
Yeah. That dude was just flying around everywhere like that. He's like 6 feet tall, not
Tanner
very
Muses,
athletic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like undersized, not overly athletic, but that dude just like, he knew where the ball was going on like every play. Like it was
Yeah.
pretty insane. And
Well, Brent definitely is like he values instincts more than just raw speed kind of guy. So
yeah. Well,
because
and
even Bolware wasn't drafted on
no,
anything. Skalski's, maybe a special teams player in the league.
right.
You know,
And it's going to be really interesting to have a defensive staff whose answer to everything isn't to just play harder. Like that's going to be kind of wild, or play faster. It's crazy that's going to be interesting to see, like a real defensive scheme that's not stupid. I'll just say that. But what about offensively? How do we feel? Because I think most people still view Lincoln Riley as an elite offensive mind.
Mhm.
So just objectively speaking, you could view what we have now as a downgrade in offensive
Sure.
coaching ability. But what are the differences you've seen on the recruiting trail offensively as
they're
opposed
going
to
after
before?
bigger receivers.
Yeah.
That's immediately evident. I mean, there's more carryover on that side, so it's not as
Mhm.
dark, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's definitely something Kale is offering guys that are like 6'4", which Lincoln, I mean, we weren't tiny, but we certainly weren't, it doesn't seem as obvious as it does now. Though, I mean, if we were to get someone like Anthony Evans, he's not a giant, but he's fast as hell. So
Petaway too.
yeah, exactly. So
To me, I feel like we're going for faster guys at receiver. Like, I mean,
yeah, maybe
we
so,
have
like,
some
pure
big guys
speed.
on the roster.
Yeah.
I
just
think we
pure speed.
want some guys that are just purely speed guys that we kind of got away from that for some reason.
guess
I think,
maybe what I was trying to say is deep threats, guys that are
Yeah.
real deep threats.
Mhm.
I think the last staff got kind of star obsessed at receiver, especially because we could get them. Like we could go get the 5 stars. I mean, we
Yeah.
would lose them. I mean, we wouldn't actually sign them, but we could have them committed for a few months,
That's
which
cool.
was always really fun.
No, but
But
yeah, I mean, I think there's a degree to which you look at just like the past 3 years of just like, let's get another guy like CD, and it's
Right.
like there aren't those.
Mhm.
They're hard
There
to
aren't
find.
those. Like,
Yeah. Hazelwood, not that guy. He was number 1 receiver, 5 star.
In his
He-
defense, he did screw up his knee, but
He got hurt. I don't know how much to put on that. Like, ACLs, I feel like people come back from ACLs all the time. I don't know.
yeah.
But he never looked like CD. I didn't get the impression his freshman year he was going to be like this first round CD Lamb type.
Theo is fine.
Theo's fine. Bridges.
Trajan is, yeah.
He's, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, Ryan. Like it seems like we're trying to find the next first rounder instead of like, dude, go get another DD Westbrook or Hollywood Brown. And
Which those guys do
teams.
fine in the NFL anyways.
Oh yeah, of course. Hollywood was a first round pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like get a guy who can get over the top of the defense. It's like functionally all you need. If you've got a quarterback who can get him the ball, it's nice to have a guy who can do that, like, and run NFL level routes and make clutch possession catches. But there's like maybe one guy like that every year.
Yeah.
And they all play for Ohio State.
Yeah, or Alabama. Yeah, like, jeez. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's a clear shift in recruiting. Just the types of players that we're recruiting. I mean, there's a potential outcome for us on the defensive line that I will just lose my shit if we pull it off. Like, just stacked, like ridiculous talent like we've never seen on the defensive line. And
just like the edge guys, like, imagine if they get PJ and that kid from Utah, like,
yeah,
we haven't had, like, when's the last time we had an edge, like a pass rushing class that looked like that? I don't even know if we ever have in like the Rivals era. So
not multiple. I mean, last year we got Clayton Smith, but like,
yeah,
that was one guy.
Yeah, it's one guy.
This would be like, and PJ at a bar, he's better than Clayton Smith.
Yeah,
like,
I am very interested to see if how Clayton looks in this defense, just because he's a little
for sure
undersized for what they do. But I mean, Brent has made that work in the past. Vic Beasley wasn't the prototypical defensive end size, and that worked out fine. So
yeah,
curious to see how that looks.
Yeah, and then you said like the defensive tackles that we're pulling, like,
they're over 300 pounds now. It's nice.
They're big dudes, big guys that are not like, they're not tree stumps that can't move, like
Harvard's like 330 pounds. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy. So another aspect of this team that I'm really interested in is Dylan Gabriel. He was the guy I remember whenever we were going through the transfer portal whole thing, whenever Caleb Williams was still on the roster, like, Gabriel was not a guy that I was particularly high on. How do we feel about Dylan Gabriel at this point?
Oh, I think he will be fine.
Yeah, I think he will be fine. And I think, and what I'll say is, like, I think bringing him in means that I think that the movement into this new offensive system will be smoother.
Yeah,
like it will, like
he's not going to be
functional day one.
Yeah,
basically
he'll be fine.
What do you guys think about the kind of the intangible, like the leadership? What do you guys think about that aspect that he's brought in? I just didn't know that about him whenever he.
Yeah,
I think it's cool initially.
It's cool. I'm assuming you guys read about like him taking all the skill players out to a ranch and just bonding with them.
Retreat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's cool.
When you got a chance to get out to Lawton, you got to do it.
You got to take it. Yeah.
Got to do it.
It's
was Altus booked or something? Why do we go to this?
just a ranch in the 580. Oh man, well, when you're from Hawaii, it's very you don't get to go to beautiful places like Lawton very often.
Yeah, can you imagine going from the islands to Lawton? Oh god.
But yeah, so I think he's like, this is going to be another thing where I'm not expecting Dylan Gabriel to blow people away, but he's going to be a very functional quarterback in this system. He's going to rack up an ass load of yards, and the offense is going to be fine. It might be better, and I think there's every possibility it's better than it was last year, because it wasn't.
I think statistically, it definitely will be better.
Yeah. Which is, to me, like, this is the thing about like Levy versus Lincoln Riley. is that this offensive system coming in, I feel like it's not gonna be as brilliant, right? There are very, very few people who are like truly at Lincoln's level in terms of designing an immaculate offensive scheme. But I feel like we're going to be able to leverage its functional effectiveness better than we were basically since Kyler was here.
Well, my biggest, or not my biggest, but a thing I had against Lincoln was he was always trying to be immaculate instead of just doing the thing that was working.
Yeah.
Like he would outsmart himself and try to call the beautiful play instead of just the little, like, did he even know screens existed? Like,
yeah, there were. I mean, the thing that pissed me off about Lincoln and screens is that when we actually ran screens, it was usually to fucking Charleston Rambo.
Who was the worst short area quickness guy.
Yeah. Like we ran screens to the dumbest people. It was so stupid.
Charleston had a great year at Miami, though.
He did, not running screens. Guarantee you that. Getting him going down the field, sure.
But compared to what we thought he was last year, hey, good for him. He showed us, proved us
Well,
wrong.
I'm sure there's a degree of outthinking in that, right? It's like, oh, we schedule for the guy who's who's going to draw the off coverage, and so he'll have, or whatever, or just because it's like, oh, well, maybe they won't be expecting the screen to Rambo or whatever. It's like there's like an intentionality to that speaks to overthinking it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like last year, where if you run a screen with Drake Stoops or like, I'm like, yo, Mario Williams is right there.
Yeah.
He's the guy who can actually make a play. And I think
Stoops hate, but yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I mean, that to me is, I think Levy there'll be more screens with Levy. To be like, having watched several games, especially of Ole Miss last year, there's going to be a lot more like running back screen game than there ever was with Lincoln. There's going to be some receiver screen game, and there's going to be more deep passing, I think.
Sure.
And like watching Gabriel, especially Gabriel in 2019 when he was with Levy, like that dude, they threw the football down the field a ton.
I think that's kind of have a huge year.
Yeah. And that to me might be like a little bit of concern. Like, I'm not sure we have just a ton of dudes that are just like blow the top off the defense guys in this receiver core. I think Mims has to have a huge year or we have problems.
I think Farouk will be a really big like swing component. Like if Farouk can take that step, it'll look a lot prettier. So
yeah, agreed. But I don't think Theo Weiss is that guy.
No. Weiss will be the chain sweeper guy, I think.
I hope so. Yeah.
If he's anything, that's what he'll be, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
That'd
be awesome. That'd be great. So yeah, I'm really interested in the scheme. I think that one of the things that I noticed just pretty consistently in watching Ole Miss games last year is that the run game, as it progressed through the game, like very, very often it started working really, really well in the second half. Like early in the game, that's what teams are going to want to stop. They're going to be geared up to stop the run game. And there'll probably be a lot of games where we're getting stuffed early, and that it's like, shit, we're in 3rd and 7, like every possession. And we've got to be good at converting those.
Think about it. Like receivers are way on the far side and they're running a lot, running deep. So the secondary is going to get tired. And then your box is less compact, less bodies in there because they're further away, just the way they line up.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. And then you're running really, the pace is so goddamn fast.
It is.
Those big defensive linemen get tired real fast. So,
I mean, yeah, we haven't played this fast since Heupel. Heupel really likes the tempo. Lincoln, by last year, we were running slow as shit.
Yeah.
Because Lincoln wanted to manage every aspect. Oh, the defense is doing this. I better make this check. Like that was what we got to. And we just completely went away from any kind of tempo.
We had what was it, like 3 possessions against Kansas State the first?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were running so slow by last year
Yeah, between that and we couldn't get off the field, it was just painful. So.
Right. But Levy, there's going to be a lot more like we're going to run the same play 2 or 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to run more screens. We're going to do a lot of deep crossing routes or just flat out go routes. It's going to be really interesting to see how. I think it could really, really work in the Big 12.
It's a more
You
high
know?
school offense, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
I think it's a great thing.
Yeah,
frankly.
it's the Baylor offense, and there's a reason they had a ton of success with it. So
Yeah, I was looking at stats like one of those years Baylor, they were averaging like 685 yards a game. Like, I mean, that wasn't like the full season stats, but like midway through the
stretch.
year, it was
Okay.
like 685 yards. I was like, holy shit, that's
Yeah.
insane. You know, and
there's also like the doldrums of Big 12 defensive play, but still.
oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, we won't get up to those kind of ridiculous numbers, but
I don't really want to. I mean, I am curious to see kind of the balance of they're playing at such an insane pace on offense, and how does that impact defense with minimals? Like, it's an interesting marriage of.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised, not just because of everything else that goes with Jeff Levy, but that was the style of offense that because defensive coordinators, traditionally are like ultra conservative because they don't want their defense to look bad.
Right.
right.
I do wonder with Brent, because one of the things about his defense is that he's an extremely aggressive defensive coordinator.
Fun as hell. Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a degree to which I wonder if that like he's like, yeah, good. Yeah. Let's get lots of chances to get sacks. Like
yeah, that's true. It's a good point.
That to me is like, I just don't think Brent cares about that kind of like he wants to win the game, and he knows that the more points you score, the better chance you have of winning the game.
I don't think he's like a Narduzzi in that.
No,
in his mindset.
He's not. I don't think he's going to be out there looking to like protect his side of the ball or anything. I think he's going to be fired up.
If you think about, let's think about this, like if you think about the kind of defense Georgia runs, it's not the type of defense Clemson runs. And what I mean by that is they're actually they don't do a lot of blitzing.
Right.
They're just extremely sound, and they're the most talented guy 11 out there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in a lot of ways, Georgia's defense is not that dissimilar to what Mike Stoops was wanting to do at OU.
No, they're just way more
they're
talented.
just so much better at it than we ever were,
But the philosophy isn't that different.
Right. Yeah. Brent, it's like he's forcing the issue.
Yeah,
which I might get him burned, but he's going to force the issue. And I think Grinch, that was his thing as well.
He's just worse at it.
Yeah, he was worse at it, and his scheme was so simplistic. There's nothing simplistic about Brent Venables' scheme. It's going to change every week. It's going to change drive by drive.
I mean, I remember them
adjustments
whenever he left, and Mike came back. They were talking about how much easier the playbook was.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think my thing with Levy is the offense, I think that you scheme your offense to win the Big 12. And if you want to do more, that's when it comes down to Biedenbow, Todd Bates, and Schmitty. Right. It's like those three guys will get you through the first round of the playoff.
That's how you win a national title.
That should be the plan. Is for the offense, just do some nonsense. Just do whatever works.
Yeah,
and then rely on talent in the trenches at the highest level.
Reality is we're 3 years away there. But we have, I still believe in Biedenbow. I think it was more of because they're just weak. I don't know. And then, Bates has the skins he has the ability. You can see what he's done in the past. So,
well, I think
that we have the guys that are capable of doing it. So,
right. Yeah. The offensive line, I think, has the potential to surprise a lot of people.
I think they could be pretty good this year, actually.
Yeah. And one of the things that stuck out to me, about last year is that there were multiple games. I know going into the Nebraska game, and I think Iowa State was always about like this, talking about stuff like how they felt like they had the advantage up front on us, and it showed in the games.
Mhm.
You know, like we couldn't run the ball very effectively against freaking Nebraska, you know, and then, you know, consistently through the year, there would just be these times where we just couldn't run the football, or
Yep.
we couldn't protect Caleb Williams, or on the defensive side, we're getting pushed around. All of those, yeah, all of those suggest a lack of just pure strength.
Right.
That I think is probably going to be addressed with the new old strength and conditioning coach with Jerry Schmidt coming back. Underrated thing that I really love about Jerry Schmidt coming back is one of the first, like his statement when he came back to OU was, he was like, yeah, making the decision to leave A&M was not hard. You know, like it literally was like, yeah, leaving A&M for this job, that was not a hard decision at all. This is much better, which hilarious to me.
The guy
But
doesn't like Colts. Yeah.
no,
Can't
yeah.
blame him.
Well, and just look at, I mean, A&M, like they've done well up front. You
Yeah.
know, like they can't get a quarterback to save their lives. They've had
I
some
like the
issues,
inverse.
but they've got freaking dudes on both sides of the ball on that offensive and that defensive line. You know, it's pretty crazy.
That will be interesting actually to see if there's any degeneration. Maybe not, because it's hard to know like the first year, but like over the next couple of years, just in the trenches. Like if you see OU start getting better and better in the trenches, and A&M kind of decreasing because they've had, you know, Kenyon Green and DeMarvin Leal and all those guys that were doing really well. So that'll be curious
Yeah.
to see if there's any noticeable difference in
Mhm.
2 years.
Yeah, and I look at a guy like Creed Humphrey. That dude played so far below his talent level his last 2 years at
Yeah.
Oklahoma. Man.
Yeah.
Then he got to the NFL and he's like the best center in the league.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Like what the hell was happening?
Yeah.
You know, like that's one of the things I'm the most excited about. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like no matter what, I'm not going to hate this team like I hated last year's team. Like, I think they're just fundamentally, from a like way they play football standpoint, it's going to be so much easier to watch because we're not going to be getting pushed around by Baylor, you know?
Yeah. And this was really apparent at the spring game, but like the second this team experiences success, like the very instant something on the field happens that is good, like the energy around the program from the fan base, from the players, it's going to be infectious and it's going to be kind of scary almost.
Yeah.
Like this
Well,
is
teams take on the personality of their coach, and our coach is slightly insane. So
yeah. Well, just think about like, if I don't even think we have to be amazing this year to win the Big 12.
yeah.
And if you win the Big 12 and go 11-1, you're probably making the playoff. You know, if
unless
Brent,
Notre Dame goes undefeated or something.
Sure.
That's like the only thing. So.
How funny would it be if like we get to a point in the year where we need USC to beat Notre Dame for us to make the playoff? That would be
That would be
That's
a nice
entirely
little
possible.
moral conundrum for people.
yeah. But like just imagine like how like Brent will be a cult leader if he equals the success that Lincoln Riley had in his first year, in
I'm
a year
already-
where everybody already kind of, nobody thinks we're going to be much this year. Everybody thinks we're going to take a step back. We lost this genius coach that won 80% of his games, best offensive mind in the country. We lost all of our good defensive players. There's no way we're going to be as good as we were last year. We were so good last year. Stupid. But like, just imagine like it's probably going to be unhealthy. Like the way that fans view Brent Venables if somehow he makes a Big 12 championship playoff run. Like,
I'm already waiting for
just
like
insane.
the national media to just completely ignore everything they said over the summer and say, "Oh, look how great he's doing," and
Yeah. Well, it's
it was
gonna be
obvious from the get go.
it's
Yeah.
gonna be the Russell Westbrook MVP season again,
Yeah.
where it's just like it's gonna be like that level of goodwill, where it's
Mhm.
like even now Thunder fans are not really willing to point out that Russell Westbrook sucks.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
love Russell Westbrook.
75,000 people came to the spring game.
Yeah.
75,000.
Mhm. No, it's wild, you know, and I look at the potential of the team. Like, I think that there's just like something about it makes me feel good, you know, like I feel like we're gonna have a better season than even maybe we're expecting, you know. And I'm expecting 10-2, 9-3. That's kind of what I have things set as. Like, if we go 9-3, I'm not going to be like disappointed at all. I don't feel like, you know, depending on the games, whatever. But
Might be a
like,
little disappointed, but
yeah, but you know, maybe I think that the mentality of the team is going to be different. I think the attention to detail, like, that's an underrated aspect of what people don't talk about with Lincoln, is that like his teams were dumb as shit,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
fucking stupid. Like,
they're always pretty heavily penalized.
They frequently got away with it because they were so talented. But you think about all those, like those Beanbow lines. I love those Beanbow lines, but like they constantly were drawing unsportsmanlikes and things like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, I
And even more recently, think of all of the goddamn holding that has happened over the past 2 years.
Yep.
Or
I
the-
mean,
my
Tyrese
favorite one is-
Robinson.
yeah.
Tyrese Robinson never figured out how to not be a penalty machine. Neither did Marquise Hayes. Those guys started for 3 years, and they were both just penalty machines.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Chris Murray was a complete and total penalty machine last year. You know, like, there's just been guys that just never get it figured out. I don't think that's going to be allowed.
Yeah.
The all-time classic
the
to me
new
is
staff.
Buki, like getting the PI
Yeah.
Yeah.
against LSU, just like launching himself into that. I guess it wasn't a PI, but like
Targeting.
targeting, excuse me,
Yeah.
against that dude in LSU for like no reason. It's like,
Right. Like, what the hell why was that not taken care of? You know what I mean? Like, that, I just don't see that being like a thing that is going to be allowed. You know, it might start out like, oh, we're getting some penalties. Every team gets penalties early in the year, but I think it'll improve as the season goes. One of the games that really sticks out to me, and I watched this game, or I watched like extended highlights of this game the other day. It was the 2018 Texas Tech game in Lubbock. We should have lost that football game.
trying to even remember which one that was.
That was,
We went
Kyler was
down
our
early. I think
quarterback.
Kyler threw 2 early interceptions in that.
2 early picks.
Is that the Robert Barnes like 2-point?
Yep,
Yeah,
that was
okay.
the game.
Dumb game.
Tech,
Yep.
Tech lost their quarterback at halftime.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, we probably should have
Got a
lost that
shoulder.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a game with Kyler Murray in at center, under center.
Yeah.
How
Kyler
are
Murray
you
was our
losing to
quarterback.
Texas Tech in that situation?
Yeah, like, there was a play, like CD Lamb makes a huge play going down the field, and after the play, he just kicks a Texas Tech player. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we wind up not scoring on that possession. We would have gone up like 2 or 3 scores if we had scored a touchdown on that possession.
Guess I
Instead, we
blocked
don't
that
score at all, and we're in a dogfight till the very end of that game. You know, because of just stupid things that we do. You know, and I just can't see that being a thing under Brent Venables.
Well, it
you
definitely
know?
wouldn't have been under Bill Snyder.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. You know, I don't like Dabo like as a person that much, but I don't remember his teams ever being idiots like that. So maybe they are,
Yeah.
but I think, you know, for the most part, Brent hasn't been around teams that do a lot of that stuff. So
Yeah, man. I don't know. I feel I've not been this ready for a football season to get here.
yeah,
a long
it's
time.
exciting, if nothing else, because it's a true unknown. Like with Lincoln, he
Yeah.
had an idea because he had been there, but we haven't had something like this in a while where it's like a legitimate reset. So
No.
um,
Yeah, and it's a healthy reset in that I think we all agree that things just were not headed in the right direction.
no, I think
And even if it doesn't go great, you know, it's still exciting because it's different, you know, and so we'll see how that goes. Speaking of, go ahead.
A quick stat check here. Yeah, Clemson has absolutely obliterated Oklahoma in terms of penalty yards per game.
Hmm.
Yeah.
just like so much more disciplined.
That's not surprising at all. Not surprising
Did you
at all.
guys know, by the way, that apparently in this was the 2019-2020 season, Oklahoma was 125th in FBS in penalty yards per game in terms
Sounds
of like
about right.
most, or in terms
Yeah.
of like
Yeah,
it's bad to have a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So
Yeah,
so that's the sort of thing we're talking about. Clemson was 28th that year.
I just remember like OU was always one of the worst, and like Tech, whenever, especially when Kingsbury was there, it's just like we were always overshadowed by Tech because they're just the straight up worst in the country, or one of them. So
I mean, Lincoln honestly might just be like glorified Cliff Kingsbury. Like he has so many of the same problems. Like his teams have so many of the same problems that Cliff Kingsbury's teams have had.
so you're saying
know?
he's going to have a 5-year NFL coaching head coaching.
Probably will, right? Like he probably will, and
Kingsbury's lasted longer in the NFL than he did in college. So
yeah. Well, and Cliff, like he never had the advantage of coaching at Oklahoma. He had to coach at freaking Texas Tech. It's a much harder job.
only one person's done it well. Yeah.
Yeah. And and I guess the last thing I'll say about
There's another crazy person, by the way.
right. Yeah. I guess the last thing I'll say about Brent is we're not going to get into post-game press conferences after struggling to beat Kansas. And we're not going to have him saying, winning football games is hard. We're 8-0, that's not going to be a thing. He's not going to be saying we're close after every game. And I am very excited about that, cause
if you suck, you suck. Call a spade a spade.
Yeah. If you need to do a better job, Bob Stoops, that was like his thing. Like if there was ever any struggles, it was like, it's on us as coaches to figure it out.
It's goddamn Utah State. Yeah.
Yeah. And Lincoln, I don't think he ever personally took that responsibility. Like it was like, we'll get it figured out. We won. Now we got a chance. We'll go figure it out. It'll be fine.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's not what college football is about. College football is about kicking everybody's ass if you can. NFL, if you win every game by 1 point, great. You're a great team. But that's not college football.
NFL has like legitimate talent level parity for them.
Absolutely.
Obviously, some teams are better than others, but they're all pros.
Yeah.
You're not playing teams that are like JV squads in the NFL. So
right. Yeah. I guess all of my points about Lincoln can be, I think Lincoln is an NFL coach coaching in college. He thinks he wants to do the college thing. I think he's an NFL guy from a mentality standpoint. And I think Brent Venables is like to a T, he is a college football coach. Like, I don't think he would ever dream of coaching in the NFL. I think Brent Venables.
Well, for the longest time, it seemed like he wasn't even interested in being a head coach, right?
Right. Yeah. It had to be the perfect situation. I mean, this genuinely might have been like the only place he would have coached.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know he turned down Auburn last year, so
yeah,
he's had plenty of opportunities.
Other than maybe Dabo leaves Clemson, maybe he would have moved up or something. Like that's like the only.
If he went
spot.
to Alabama and
right,
they promoted Brent or something,
which they probably
would have
done. Yes, so. Yes. But yeah, so I feel like we are lucky for things to have gone the way that they did. I still think that I still have some feelings towards Lincoln Riley that are not positive for sure, to say the least. But in the end, I think we upgraded. And I'm glad that a coach like that isn't coaching my team anymore.
Anytime you can have someone that's been on like 8 staffs that have been to a national title game and won half of them. Yeah. He knows what it looks like. So
yeah.
And like you said, anytime you can have Ted Roof.
Well, that's even better.
I mean,
just for the,
he's such a great
magnetism.
So. Yeah. He's a great teacher. One of the best teachers there is, So I guess let's talk a little bit about realignment, because Lincoln's job in the last couple of weeks has gotten harder than what he thought it was going to be.
Right. We
which
read off
I
that
think is
dog
awesome.
shit conference he's in now earlier. And
Yeah.
Such
And
a
he's going to have to
star.
play real teams now.
Well,
so obviously, I mean, maybe you've been living under a rock. USC, UCLA to the Big Ten. Definitely the weirdest, one of the weirder possible realignment scenarios, I would say.
yeah, and they start before OU does in the SEC. They start in 2024.
Right. We'll see. We'll see if they start before OU does.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously very, very strange. It's a weird situation. Picking off, first off, only one of the California system schools. Very strange. The governor is very unhappy.
Yeah.
And partnered with the private school across town, and moving to a conference that is not like the Pac-12. It's odd because in a lot of ways the Pac-12 and the Big Ten are probably I don't know. You know what? Screw the ACC. They're the two most academically inclined conferences, right? They're the conferences whose admins, at least theoretically, in the case of the Big Ten, actually in the case of the Pac-12, and theoretically in the case of the Big Ten, prioritize things other than football. We saw it during the COVID season that was really not the case in the Big Ten. They just want people to think it is.
Mhm.
But culturally, I think in football terms, very different. It's a weird fit, and it means the Big Ten now stretches from Los Angeles to New Jersey.
Yeah.
Well, talking culturally in the way that the two conferences view football, like to me, there just isn't a football culture in the Pac-12.
No, there really isn't.
There's not a conference-wide culture. There are some schools that take football seriously, I guess.
Oregon cares. That's about it.
Oregon cares. I think arguably Utah, maybe. I think they have a pretty established football culture.
Well, and I think the thing about Oregon and Utah is that they have this established football culture, but if they were bad for 5 years, it would go away.
It would go away. Sure. Shouts to Utah. Yeah, go Utah. But the Big Ten, it's football's big. It's a big freaking deal to Michigan, Ohio State. The fans of those programs would argue that they're more passionate than the SEC teams. You know what I mean? They're probably wrong. I'm not saying that,
right. But these are fan bases that every weekend fill the largest sporting stadiums in the world.
Right. Over 100,000 seats. Yeah. And then even schools like Iowa, they've historically not this insanely successful program, but they love college football in Iowa City. It's a big freaking deal.
Penn State, has massive stadium.
Yeah, huge stadium. They've got tradition, and
Chip Kelly in Lansing, Michigan in November. Let's hear it.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, I mean, think about like Lincoln. He's gonna have to play against those teams in November. He's recruiting guys in California that hate the cold.
Right.
And we talked about pretty consistently that his teams at Oklahoma were soft.
Yeah.
Imagine what his USC teams are going to be like when they're playing in, Lansing, Michigan, like you said, when it's 10 degrees outside, or when they're in Penn State, it's a wild cultural shift to go from the roster, or the list of teams that USC's playing this year to what they could potentially be playing in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And
Just
but the good,
I will say for all our Spartans out there, Michigan State is technically in East Lansing, not Lansing. East Lansing being a city directly to the east of Lansing.
I thought it would have been west, but
thank you for clearing that up for us. Yeah. I will say the good thing for Lincoln is that he's going to have a lot more excuses that he can make now if they lose games.
It's true.
It's long flights, conditions, he's going to have a lot more excuses. So that's good. At
I don't
least
know.
for
I'm
him.
I'm just glad Rutgers can finally go to the Rose Bowl.
Right.
So.
Good old Rutgers.
It is funny. This kills the Rose Bowl, right?
Good. Let it die.
Yeah.
So we can
It's-
stop having the damn games on
Yeah. I mean, you
Stupid.
can have the parade.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, this whole thing is, how do you guys feel about the whole realignment and the just inevitable future of college football that
I'm
we're
kind of bummed about it, but
headed
like,
to? I am too, man.
I mean, I grew up, the Big 12 was like an actual good conference, and
Yeah.
everything was regional and made sense. So I'm kind of bummed about it, but I mean, I'll still keep watching it. So
Oh yeah.
Well, because
I will
like,
too.
and not to be like, oh well, when we do it, it's different and better, but like OU in Texas to the SEC does make geographic sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does make some cultural sense as well.
right.
More for Oklahoma than for Texas, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah.
that's like there's a contiguity there that is just not present with this move, and with the majority of the moves. Arguably, you could look at the moves that spawned out of the OU Texas to the SEC, the Big 12's grabs.
Yeah.
This sort of
It's all about money and
right.
chasing
it-
that. So
I
Well,
think
this
it
is-
it puts conferences in a very weird place right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe
the-
in the end it'll shake out in a way that makes sense, but right now it doesn't really.
Well, the thing that gets to me about sports in general and the fact that money is really the only driving force in all of these and all the decisions that are made is that like the reality of the situation of the sport is like it is an entertainment entity. And I wonder if having all of these like college football traditional geographic rivalries, like that was part of the entity that is college football.
Yeah.
And I worry about taking those away and that hurting the overall product of college football. And in the end, the sport loses popularity.
yeah.
Yeah, and loses the fan base because they don't have those like traditional things. Because essentially what they're trying, like what we're headed for is like a worse version of the NFL. You know what I mean?
Where
it's-
you're
There's like two mega conferences where it's like
Mhm.
AFC, NFC. But I'm like, well, NFL football is just objectively better football, And
it's
so
better
why wouldn't-
football. Yeah, but it doesn't have any of the stuff we like about college. So
right. So why would we watch college football if it's just going to be a worse version of the NFL?
right.
Whereas
To watch
like
college
what-
football for all the weird shit, and I'm
Yeah.
going to lose that.
Right. I
So,
know. I definitely feel this, and it's definitely. I feel like in a lot of ways it's related to the complaint everybody has about how everything's a playoff now,
Mhm.
where it's like the media product is becoming like it's being shaped by, and I think like you can blame ESPN for this. I think that's probably fine. Nobody will get hurt if you do.
I'm not
Um,
going to defend ESPN.
right.
Yeah.
But like the media product is becoming something very different, I think, as a result of a recognition that there is, at least in the short term, just an ass load of money to be made. But I just, college football, it exists in contradiction to itself. To get really Hegelian here, right? It's like there are contradictions at the heart of what college football is, which is basically a bad idea that is extremely profitable.
right.
In part because it relies on the labor of unpaid children. It relies on the like the goodwill of academic institutions to house and pay for the facilities for players who are attending their institutions with no intent of ever getting a degree, and no desire to do anything but ultimately play this sport professionally. It relies on the largesse of the professional league to be happy to take advantage of this free feeder league they have. Like frankly, I think a lot of college, like this would result in college football getting worse, but it would fix it in a lot of ways, is if there just was a minor league.
Yeah.
If there was a professional developmental football league in the United States, college football could be college football again, basically, with the exception of like the players would be much worse.
Yeah. It would be, yeah, I don't necessarily like want that to happen. I'm not saying that like
Well, I don't think it ever will because the
I
No,
don't-
it's
the
unlikely
NFL
to ever happen.
the NFL is
you know,
getting a
it's-
free developmental league right now. Why
Right.
are
And
they?
it's like, do I want that to happen? I don't really know. I like watching college football as it exists currently.
yeah.
But like this is when I say like the league exists in a contradiction to itself. And it's like,
Right.
to me, that's one of the only ways of resolving the contradiction.
Right. No, I agree. And my only concern with it just comes from with every year, I think we get closer and closer to operating like a worse version of the NFL. Like we're starting, that we've started the NIL thing, which is totally fair. Like I think it should exist. But at the same time, it is another factor that is moving it away from what made college football what it is. You know what I mean? And I worry about the long-term viability and the popularity of the sport, given all of these changes, when again, all of these things, just watch the NFL if that's what you want.
Right.
Because it's better.
But
I
it's
think,
and part again, there's a compelling argument when we talk about the long-term viability. There's a decent argument that we shouldn't play football at all.
That's true. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's that exists in contradiction to the fact that football is awesome and really fun to watch and participate in.
Mhm.
But this is if you come at this expecting it to make sense, you'll be disappointed. If you come to it expecting something predictably good to happen, you're going to be disappointed because it can't.
I guess that's true. Because I guess if you look at just the way the world operates, the world clearly doesn't operate in a way that makes sense and is worried about long-term viability.
No.
Right.
So
there's a lot of when you talk about the sustainability of college football, it's kind of like talking about the sustainability of the interstate highway system.
Yeah.
And, should this even exist? At the moment, we take advantage of the fact that it does, and we derive joy from the experiences it brings us, but there's a compelling argument that a world in which everybody owns a car should never have existed. And there's a compelling argument that a world where people play college football should never have existed.
What I'm hearing is we just need to blame Eisenhower for college football.
Exactly. That's really not too far off. But the but the essence of it is, we find joy in a thing that is strange and probably before the if college football was a person before the pearly gates, could it justify its existence to the Almighty? I don't know if it could. And that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy it while it's here. But it also means, pay attention to the fact that things are getting weird and strange and potentially worse. And that, there might not be a way to stop it.
Yeah. And I it's also kind of similar to the idea of the planet we live on is deteriorating really quickly. And
it might be stopped for entirely different reasons.
That's true.
in the future, so.
Yeah. But we just have to kind of live and enjoy the things that we enjoy.
Let's just win a natty before that happens. How about
That's
that?
right. Just give me one more natty before everything ends, and
then I can die at least knowing I saw one. So
yeah.
I mean,
That's
look,
crazy.
we're softball school anyways. At the end of the day,
true.
Dude, have you seen the number, the transfers we brought in?
It's insane.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I don't even know, how are
Multiple
all of these people gonna play?
I don't
Yeah.
know.
yeah, it's so awesome. You and I talked about this during the World Series, but seeing fans of other teams be like Oklahoma is either cheating or have ruined the sport.
Oh my God. There was the one that I love the most was when people started talking about how OU had to have illegal bats. That's
They had
only
cork in their bats or
explanation.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, not court, but
Well, you know what I mean.
yeah.
Whatever the metal equivalent of that is,
Right.
Yeah, how do you cork a aluminum bat?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the equivalent of that is for the
You got
pin bat.
Jocelyn Olive swinging vibranium out there. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'd watch that. That'd be badass. So
very cool.
Yep. Not like that. That was so awesome. Like we truly, in regards to softball, we truly know how Alabama fans feel in football. You know, like that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just how they feel.
And
I mean,
also, like SEC softball is going to be amazing. SEC bat and ball sports in general are going to be amazing now.
Yeah.
Like, just
well, yeah, who the hell saw baseball coming? I thought
Right.
we were gonna suck. So
well, if you
Brent
consider
Venables saw it coming. Brent Venables saw it
Brent
coming.
Venables did see it coming at the spring
he had
game.
the vision, and we made fun of him
God,
for
that
it.
was so funny at the spring game when we got to baseball and he just like described the act of playing baseball.
They're scoring runs and stealing bases. Yep, it was amazing. Yep.
But yeah, God, like the men's World Series this year, if you consider OU and Texas SEC teams, was like almost entirely SEC teams.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's just gonna be fun. Like,
Oh yeah.
No, that's just gonna be really fun. So
sports like baseball and softball are going to be, those are the kinds of sports that are going to be really hosed by a lot of this realignment. Not for OU and Texas, again, because they did this reasonably and moved to somewhere geographically reasonable.
yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't understand how USC and UCLA can play Rutgers in like,
On a
I don't know,
Thursday.
what other sports does Rutgers have?
I don't know much. I'm not very familiar with the Rutgers athletic program. I must
Because
they have women's
USC and
basketball.
UCLA are two schools that care about their Olympic sports. So
Yeah, I know they have women's basketball, but I don't know what else.
one of the things I don't think we talked about, and I'm not sure we have ever talked about him. And I'm seeing a tweet from him. This is why I'm bringing him up. But Thad Turnipseed.
right.
Is-
Thad Turnipseed, I think
The
he's
best
going to be a guy that like, if this works out, everyone's going to like point to him and no
Yeah.
one can explain what he did.
Right.
Got
No
things
one's
done, that's what
truly gonna know. Like, yeah, that's what people describe him as. Like, Thad gets things done. That's what he does. And his most recent tweet is like of a new project that is already being completed. So it's I don't have any idea what it is. It looks like there's a lot of like recovery like machines that are gonna help athletes in their recovery a lot.
Cool.
You know, so cool.
I don't know.
That's interesting. But the thing with that Turnipseed, like the dude's resume is just undeniably incredible. Like
Yeah.
his career essentially started with Saban at Alabama when
Then he went
they
to
turned
Dabo.
things around. And then he went with Dabo. And like that was another guy when he left Clemson, their fans freaked out about it.
Yeah.
You know, like they were like, oh shit, he's taking Thad. Are you kidding me? Like they don't really know exactly what he did, but they know he was important,
Yeah.
you know? And that was one of the things. And like with Brent, I remember him talking about how like, you know, the decisions he made on who he brought in with him, you know, and he talked, and one of the things he made me think of is that like, or one of his quotes made me think that Thad Turnipseed was like the guy that he felt was like arguably the biggest hire he made, you know, when he came
Yeah.
here.
Probably because he has a lot of trust in him and you can just let him do
Yeah.
his thing and not have to worry about it.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see like I have very little doubt that if things go well here, that Thad Turnipseed will be elevated in that cult status with Brent,
Yeah.
and it'll be.
Well,
I'll
and
be
his
interested to
name-
see how that goes.
Again, the man's name is Turnipseed. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
We hired ourselves a fixer named Turnipseed. We're ready for the SEC.
Yeah. I remember I tweeted whenever I saw that report, I was like, okay, guys, you can't just make up names and put them in a report. Like you gotta have like it just sounds so funny to me. But yeah, no, it's really interesting. But no, I'm excited. I think we all are excited about this upcoming season. And more importantly, the overall direction of where things are headed.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons for that excitement has to be the fact that every Texas fan thinks it's going to fail. So
Yeah.
that's how you know it's going to
well,
work.
when Jeff
So,
Ketchum expects failure, you know it's going to happen. So,
yeah. No, it's I want to talk about Texas on a pod sometime, but I don't think it needs to be this one.
yeah, that can be part 2.
Yeah,
Big 12
'cause
previews.
I might go on for 2 hours
Right.
about them.
Yeah. Well, pouring out for Arch Manning, you know,
Yeah.
before he even had a chance, he became a Texas Longhorn.
He's
Doomed himself.
truly the next Chris Sims. I believe that. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right, we done?
I think
Sounds
that
like
I think we just about hollered about everything conceivably we could holler about, including climate change. So I'd say we're done. Thank you for listening to the Oklahoma Drill. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, Podbean, Spotify. Follow us on Twitter at RWMaxi, at Pert_Hapley. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your life. And we'll see you later.